As Greg said, I'm Mark Bakk. I'm our Director of Finance and Administration. I want to apologize up front because for about the next 15 minutes you get an accountant and then you get an engineer. So here's my apology for that. I don't think I'm going to leave it at that. Does anybody in here know the difference between an accountant and an attorney? The accountant knows he's boring. All right. Dale told the story. Mine's quick. I got a quick story to tell too. So there was a woman who went to the doctor, and the doctor told her that she only had 6 months left to live. So she's like, "Oh my God, doc, what should I do?" He says, "Well, you should marry an accountant." She's like, "Well, why? Will that make me live longer?" He said, "No, but it'll seem longer." All right, my job is to provide you with a financial report and an audit report, and then Derek Howard, who's in charge of our engineering, will come up and talk about 3 keys to safe and reliable electric service. We've made a pledge to keep the meeting moving and the information relevant. So, first item on the list is the audit report. I don't know if I'm supposed to do this or not, but I'll try to advance my own. There we go. That's what it looks like on the surface. The board contracted with Brady Martz and Associates out of Grand Forks, North Dakota for our 2015 financial audit. It's the 7th time they've audited our financial records. We're one of about 20 electric distribution co-ops in the upper Midwest that they currently audit. The audit issued a clean opinion on our financial controls. It also reports that we're in full compliance with requirements set forth by our lenders. Primarily, that's the federal government's Rural Utilities Service. If you've been around a while, you remember that as the REA. If you're interested in keeping up on our financials, we do report them monthly in our financial news, or in our newsletter, The Newsline. We post them on our website every month. Our final numbers for 2015 are printed in our annual report, which was mailed out in your bills this past month. We also included a copy of that annual report in your registration bags. In addition to the audit, I'll touch on a few key indicators and trends that affect our costs and thus rates. I'll start at the federal level with interest rates. We've seen very favorable interest rates for roughly the past 7 or so years. The Fed did bump up. This is the federal funds rate that we're looking at here. Fed bumped it up a little bit fourth quarter of 2015. That didn't have really any noticeable impact on the rates we're able to borrow at. I checked today. We'd be able to get 30-year money at 2.33%. We borrow directly from the USDA at 1/8% above Treasury. Those low interest rates mean that we're able to finance distribution or construction projects and additions to our distribution infrastructure for literally pennies on the dollar. Investing in poles, wires, substations, and those types of construction projects. We continue to replace plant, and by plant I mean our distribution system. Some of it's 60 to 70 years old. Our balance sheet shows more than $280 million of assets spread over an 11,000 square mile service territory. 2 examples of that would be substations. We have 46 substations. A distribution line of more than 8,200 miles. 68,000 meters. Tens of thousands of transformers. A fleet of more than 100 vehicles. 8 co-op buildings that house our 130 employees, as Greg said, across geographically one of the largest service territories in the United States. Flipping from assets to the expense side of things, wholesale power accounts for roughly 55% of our total expenses any given year. It was 54% in 2015. That means more than half of our annual budget goes to Great River Energy, where we purchase the power on your behalf. We're the distribution end of things. We own the substations and the distribution lines, poles and wires and transformers up to the meter at your location. We're one of 28 owners of Great River Energy. They own the large power plants and large transmission lines to get it to our distribution substation, where we take over from there. Beyond that 54% for wholesale power, the rest is what we consider our local costs. Largest components of those are depreciation and interest, which are directly related to costs of owning and operating our distribution system. Combined, those are about 18% of our total budget. For 2015, that equates to about $15 million. Derek will talk more about this when I'm done, but we continue to invest in the reliability of your service. We cleared thousands of miles of brush and trees from under power lines in 2015. It's one of our single biggest annual expenses. But it's one of the best investments we could make in order to ensure that we serve our purpose to you, which is safe and reliable electric service. On a statement of operations, which in a normal for-profit business would be called an income statement, we saw two key numbers drop in 2015 from 2014. Kilowatt hour sales and revenues. Kilowatt hour sales fell by about 10% from 2014 and through 2015. That corresponds to about a $5 million decrease in revenues. With that said, when we sell less to you, we also have to purchase less from Great River Energy. So, the benefit of that is the cost of the power we purchase also dropped. The main reason for that is weather. We have a lot of heating load on our system. A lot of it through load management programs, off-peak and dual fuel and those types of programs. Our kilowatt hour sales are pretty sensitive to winter weather. Long cold winters like we had in 2014, and we're talking 2016 now, so go back with me 2 years. 2014, I'm a guy who grew up on Lake Vermilion. I like to go back to Lake Vermilion for the fishing opener. We were joking in 2014 that we're gonna have to bring ice augers because Lake Vermilion was still froze over for the fishing opener. I didn't even bring a boat. So that kind of weather, and then 2015 was more of what we'd consider a normal winter. So that's the reason we had a fairly significant drop in sales from 14 to 2015. Despite that drop in sales, Greg touched on it, we were able to hold off on any type of electric rate increase. But property taxes, line trucks, transformers, technology, healthcare, all of those costs continue to increase, and they're putting the pressure on electric rates. So the board approved a rate increase just this past March, went into effect. It's a change of about 6% to your average residential member. Other rates, such as off-peak, dual fuel, heat pumps, security lights, commercial rates, they also had increases due to the change in the cost of providing that service. But I want to touch on heat pump rates for a little bit, because heat pumps rates saw a little bit bigger increase than the rest of the rates. That heat pump rate change affects roughly 250 of our members. They've been on a special rate that's been closed to new members since 2007. Reason being, going back that far, Great River Energy used to have a special wholesale rate for heat pumps. Well, they haven't had that special rate. That special rate allows us to provide a lower retail rate. Well, they haven't had that special rate for going on 10 years now. So those heat pump rate members, in effect, were being subsidized by all the other members who were paying their fair share at the time. In a co-op, we do socialize costs, but we don't subsidize. Otherwise, you'd have one neighbor, who's already paying his fair share, paying for a portion of someone else's bill. And that was the case with the heat pump rates. So that's the reason that heat pump rates are increasing a little bit more than an average residential rate. For the bigger picture on rates, the rate change will recover additional costs, basically for reliable, viable, and safe electric service. What it'll go for reliability and safety, an additional roughly $2 million for clearing trees under power line right-of-ways. About $1.8 million for construction projects, aged infrastructure, replacing old plant. Derek will talk about that. That's about $1.8 million of the increase. The additional $1 million is to the increase in wholesale power. For the average co-op member, and our average member uses about 750 kilowatt hours, it's about a $10 a month change in your electric bill. If you attended any of our district meetings, you've seen this. I thought I had the best slide in the slide deck talking about this one until I saw Greg's picture with his little grandson. So I got to take that back. But it's also printed in our annual reports in your registration bags. But it helps to explain the situation that we find ourselves faced with. And I'll explain it since you probably can't see it. It goes back to 2002 and all the way out to 2015. And what it's doing is expressing a few things in relation as if 2002 was 100%. So I'll start with this blue line in the middle. Out there says 109. That's our kilowatt hour sales, meaning that kilowatt hour sales are 109% of what they were in 2002. So that's not a lot of growth in kilowatt hour sales for a period that long. Now down here, this green line, that's the number of new services we connect in a given year. It's an indicator of growth, of consumer growth, new homes, new businesses, those types of things. This number out here on the end is 38, meaning that in 2015 we put in 38% of the new services that we were doing back in 2002. Contrary to that, the red line at the top, that says 178. That's the cost of wholesale power per kilowatt hour. So per kilowatt hour wholesale power is 178% of what it was in 2002. There's a lot of factors in that, most of them regulatory and legislative, but I won't get into that. What this situation creates is an upward pressure on rates when you've got a period of increasing costs, but stagnant or no growth. So when utilities recover their costs through electric rates, this is what creates the pressure, upward pressure on rates. The good news for us, our long-term rate philosophy, where we collect a large portion of our fixed costs through a fixed component into rates, alleviates some of that pressure when sales fluctuate and you're relying on recovering your costs through a variable energy component. So our rate structure helps alleviate some of this rate pressure. But we still have an obligation to provide safe and reliable electric service with little or no growth in sales and consumers. One other thing to touch on, in your registration bags, and you don't have to pull this out, I don't expect you to, but if you were at our meetings, the district meetings, you saw this slide, but you heard me talk about what we're calling the great conservation paradox. I won't get into that, but it's in your books or bags. But when you read it, it's important to understand one thing. We're not trying to say conservation is bad. Conservation is a good thing, but it does have an impact on electric rates. But it's important to know that the conservation movement and the folks behind it and the goal is conservation of energy. It's not about conservation of money. Before I close, I want to encourage you, if you're not participating already, if you've got mobile devices, iPhones, iPads, Androids, check out our Smart Hub app. You can pay your bill online. You can check your monthly usage. You can compare month-to-month bills, review your payment history. Fairly recently, we've added functionality to report outages through that mobile app. It's a great tool, trying to make things more convenient for you. We had a booth when you came in, a Smart Hub booth. If you didn't get a chance to check that out, there's some literature there related to the app. I realize not everybody's interested in being on their phones or iPads all the time, but myself and my little girls are. We live in an increasingly complex world. Smart Hub is one of the ways where we're providing service and solutions to make life living in the country as convenient as it can be in the city, but without some of the hustle and the hassle related to living in the city. Before I bring Derek up here, I got one more question. Does anybody know the difference or how you can spot an introverted engineer versus an extroverted engineer? When the introverted engineer is talking to you, he's looking down at his shoes. But when the extroverted engineer is talking to you, he's looking at yours.